Just walking into Jackson Lake in northern Alberta to start a bit of a survival trip here. So I'm out on Jackson Lake now. It was pretty windy. It was hard to get started. I came into a little bay to get a break. Some water was splashing up in the kayak and onto the camera gear. So what I decided I'm going to do today is a bit of a scenario, playing the role of a person going out kayaking with almost no gear, just a day trip which turns into a survival mission. The scenario could be maybe the wind, for example, picked up and too scared to try to get back across the lake. So now I got to camp out in the bush here somewhere. So that's basically what I'm going to do today. I'll show you what type of gear I have when I get to the shore. But first I'm going to kayak south a couple kilometers and try to explore this lake a little bit and find a point at which I can get my boat to shore. Nice little beaver lodge there beside me. Excellent place to look for food if I had to. I could try to snare a beaver. I've already seen blue-winged teals, mallard ducks, and ringneck ducks, but I am in a park, so I'm not going to try that today. Just going to hang out behind this beaver lodge for another couple minutes and let this most recent gust of wind go by. This kayak's not exactly the best model to take on windstorms. You can see in the clouds that it's quite windy at a high altitude. I forgot to mention last time about the beaver lodges. Quite often a Canada goose will put its nest right on the lodge. So having this kayak as a survival tool would enable me to go out to these lodges and collect eggs. Basically drifting along shoreline here, waiting for my chance. I'm looking for a little inlet that'll get out of the wind where I can safely get back into my boat when I want to leave tomorrow. So I passed a spot with kind of a granite looking rock. It is kind of in an inlet. It's coming up here past this birch. I'm going to see if I can sneak into there and get on some stable ground. These Pelican kayaks are a little tricky to exit. So I got my kayak up on land. Looks like a pretty suitable place to make a shelter and find some food. Normally in a situation like this, if I had flipped my kayak or I had to come into land because of a storm, I would leave something bright and visible hanging on the shoreline so that if someone is cruising along in a motorboat looking for me, increases my chances of survival. Somebody finding me. It's May 30th, 2015. And the scenario is, I was just kayaking on a day trip. I portaged 5 kilometers and then kayaked 6 or 7 kilometers down Jackson Lake. I'm into a second lake here, I'm not sure what the name is. But anyways, the scenario was a storm picked up, I had to come to shore, and now I got to spend the night with what I got. I don't have very great footwear, just these flip-flops, spring jacket, something most kayakers probably carry, whistle with some matches and a compass in here. And whatever I got in here, I believe I got a slingshot packed in there. See what I got in my pockets. Nothing in my pockets, just this Survivor Man Knife by Les Stroud. My first time trying it out. One of my biggest challenges I'm going to face today is wearing these flip-flops. It's not very proper footwear for the bush. There's prickly rows in here. Stepping on a stub in the middle of the night would be bad. That would give me a pretty severe injury to deal with, which wouldn't help me survive. And there's all kinds of sharp debris on the ground. So with that being said, I'm probably going to want to stay relatively still. I'll have my main camp spot once I find it, and then just have trails, little footpaths I can follow to go to areas with water, areas with food, and maybe I'll find a path to the lake. Kind of memorize it for the night, because once darkness falls I don't want to be getting up and panicking for some reason and jabbing my foot on one of these stubs. So one of the first things I like to do as I'm getting to know my surroundings is find some kind of walking stick slash spear, something with multiple purposes. Come across something like this. This is way too dry. Might work as firewood if I can break, but this isn't gonna have the force I need to spear a grouse or a rabbit, and it's also not gonna make a good defense against a bear or anything like that. So I'm gonna keep looking back here. I see some aspen and birch. So this here is basically the perfect diameter I'm looking for. It's a birch, white birch. Sometimes alder or aspen or poplar work just as good, but I'm gonna try to fashion some kind of spear out of this. It's a good firm hand grip, and actually there's one a little bit smaller back there that might be even better. Yeah, so this one seems a little bit better, so I'm gonna cut that off. But rather than just sawing like crazy trying to get through this and wrecking my knife and tiring myself out, I can actually use this as kind of an axe if I can find some kind of blunt object to pound it in like that. So I need a baton. Okay, I think I found one. Everything in here is really dry, being close to the lake shore. So this could very easily break apart, but I'll start to use it and see what happens. So I'll just hammer that in like a notch. And then, yeah, see, it's breaking apart already. And this is going to save me so much energy for whatever I encounter later tonight. It's best to preserve energy. This one-day trip could very easily turn into 10 days or 20 days, so you never know. Don't want to burn yourself out right away. I'm going to show you what I'm doing on the back here. Is finishing that back cut, and then a little push should snap it off. Just cut the hinge off. Okay, so I'm just gonna delimit a little bit with the same method, baton and knife. And now I want to cut it off so it's just below shoulder height. That'll support my weight if I'm going to trip, help me guide around the bush at night, and also could be used to spear a frog, defend against a bear. Just going to twist that right off of there. Okay, it's kind of a heavy stick, so it won't be the easiest to walk around with, but it's got a lot of water moisture right now at this time of year. So quite often the first thing that happens in these situations is initial shock. You just kind of get onto land or something and you're in shock. You're thinking right away, this is bad, I'm not going to make it, I'm going to die. But then as you start thinking about what you're going to do, where your camp's going to be, finding a tool like this baton, making a stick, your mind gets occupied and you start to focus. And that has really helped me in a lot of situations. Once I had some tasks to take care of. I wasn't thinking about danger at all. I got over the initial fear, and I was a lot more productive and efficient. So keep myself busy as I'm trying to recover my legs and knees here from a long kayak ride. So to keep myself busy, I'm just going to work on this stick. And as I do that, I'm going to be brainstorming ideas on how can I make it through the night in this location, what type of food sources here, all of those things. So I want to sharpen the end of the stick with the lesser diameter, which is right here. Cutting away from myself. And I'm seeing some spruce trees here at the bottom. It looks like carpenter ants have gotten into them. So I'll certainly take a look at that as an option too. And right here in front of my face as I'm talking, I see some old man's beard. That's going to make great fire starter. There will be no issue creating a fire here. So basically I just want something really blunt like that. I can throw that at a grouse now. I'll try to demonstrate here what I plan on using it for. Let's see if my idea is going to hold up. I'll throw one right in front of the tripod to see. Yeah, that's definitely what I wanted. So right away here, see this rotten log? There could be all kinds of grubs inside here. So I'm just gonna use this stick I made to kind of poke away the bark. I should be looking up for overhead hazard if you don't want to knock a chunk of wood off. They're called Widowmaker for a reason. Some red belt mushroom. That's an indicator of brown cubicle rot. That's not going to do me any good. This is not edible. Okay, so kind of surprising. No, at the base here, no ants are crawling out like I was expecting. So another important thing I need to remember for my survival tonight is making fire. As I'm walking around the bush thinking about shelter locations, I'm also looking for things to make fire. And I just came across this white spruce with a lot of pitch on it. You can see this fracture crack here. I'm not sure what caused that. Maybe a tree fell out on it at one time. A tree could have fell right beside it and scraped it on the way down. But anyways, I want to knock some of this pitch off. It makes great fire. Probably should use my knife. So again, knife and baton are key here. Alright, so I got a couple nice gobs of pitch here. That'll make great fire starter for tonight. Sounds like a woodpecker responding to me. So this is going to be the location of my shelter. And since I don't have much rope to work with, I'm going to put a cross beam here. I don't have any rope, so I'm going to pound this stake in the ground here, and the cross beam is going to rest on top of it. Luckily there's soft ground right here, so it shouldn't be too hard. Just pound it in like that. Got a new baton. So now that stick should sit right there. Now I just got to make sure it's level with my next stick. I already cut one. I'll put that one in now. So now that I got my cross beam here, nice and sturdy, I just want to build onto this. So I'm going to be putting sticks, preferably nice solid ones like this, on a lean. And I'm going to try to gather as many as I can so this whole wall is compact. That's just barely enough space for me to spread out right here when I'm laying down. Okay, so my back wall is coming together here. Could probably still use a couple more birch, a couple more pieces for the support, but it's feeling pretty solid. Can't see it falling over in the night, and it's pretty green. It's not going to flare up on me if my fire gets a little too warm. So I'm going to take a break from this shelter building. It's quite exhausting. Got a couple nicks and gashes already. I'm going to go down to the lake and see what I can do about gathering some water. So I found a bottle in the back of my kayak, which is going to come in handy. I got this stick here. Just break some of those off. Basically, I want the bottle to sit at a position like that on this stick so that I can reach out into the lake and grab some fresh water. I got this rope off of that little matchbox and whistle that I carry around my neck. I'm going to use that to tie the bottle to the stick. This prevents me from having to wade out into the water to get some water to drink. The stuff right next to the shore is full of algae and little critters, so if I can reach out just a couple feet, I'll avoid all that and the water will be a little cleaner. So I'll tie that on. Alright, something like that. It's on there pretty tight. I can fill it halfway up. And then whether I want to purify this water or not is another question. Couple options are I could filter it run it through my hat, but that's not 100%. I could try to boil it somehow. That's pretty difficult to do on a one-day mission. If I was here for weeks, I could probably invent something for that. I could even boil it right in this plastic bottle, cut the top off, and the plastic will melt down to the edge of the water and boil it. But I don't like the idea of chemicals getting into the water from the melted plastic. So this lake is pretty clean. It is a shallow eutrophic lake with lots of algae, but I'll do my best to avoid that stuff. And I am only out here for one day, so it's better to drink lots of water and face the consequences of getting sick, I guess, opposed to being dehydrated and getting a severe headache and muscle cramps. So I am at that point where I do need water, so I'm gonna try this out. Another option is filter it through my clothes. I've done that a lot where you just suck it right out of your clothes when you're walking through wet grass or whatever. Or I could dip my shirt in the lake or my hat in the lake and drink through that. But this water looks pretty pure to me, and I'll take my chances because I would rather get a little bit sick from water out of a lake than to get extremely dehydrated and get a migraine, which I can start to feel already from working all day with that knife trying to build a shelter. So this is gonna taste good. There is lots of minnows along the shoreline. I've considered attempting to catch some. I could also make a minnow trap out of this bottle. Cutting the top off, inverting it, placing it inside itself. The fish swims in and can't swim out. I might try that, but first I want to use it to get some more water. Now that's what wilderness is all about. Just beside my campsite I got a redneck grebe and a common loon. So I'm going to start collecting some spruce boughs for my bed. It's not going to be a comfortable sleep. These are pretty prickly, but it is better than being on the ground. So I'll collect as many of these as I can. There's not a lot of options here for spruce boughs. Most of the trees are pretty mature, so the boughs are pretty high up. So when I do see this regen sized trees, I gotta get as many boughs as I can out of that. I could probably snap these with my hand, but it's that time of the year. They're pretty flexible, hard to break, so knife and baton is the way to go. So that's the bed. Okay, so I saved all the tops of these birch, organized them in a nice little pile here, and now I'm going to start filling in the back of my shelter a little more. And all the random debris that's laying around, that's where it can now be used. So I did all the hard physical labor. Now I can start weaving this stuff into the frame. So I can certainly use spruce boughs for my shelter too. What I like to do is kind of tie them into the frame. Has the inside wall. All this junky birch is the back wall, and the inside wall will be, the branches will be kind of overhanging my head like that. So let's see what happens. I want the branches to kind of follow their natural curve, so I'm going to tuck them into the frame just like this and kind of force them in through something, whether it's a knob on a branch, whatever it will connect to. Things just kind of naturally fall into place here, so just keep doing this. Okay, so now that I got one layer of branches going kind of along the inside wall, I actually do want some hanging over my head too. So now I'm gonna do a second layer just like that, overhanging my head. So tucking them in the top of the frame. This is where rope comes in handy. It's not the most impressive shelter I've ever built. It's kind of just a temporary thing, and if I was to stay here for a long period of time, I could obviously build onto this and spend a lot more time. Now that was awesome. Just sitting here, going through some notes, and then some type of falcon lands right in front of my face. And I got 0 minutes left on my camera on the SD card, so I better deal with that right now. Sometimes I've only had a knife and maybe a lighter, and you really need to create ideas quickly to deal with situations that you come across. You run into things that you never expected, and your mind starts working for you, and suddenly you're inventing things that you never thought of before. The biggest challenge I've ever faced in a survival situation was dislocating my shoulder. I always thought, well, if someone breaks their arm or their hand, it's not a big deal. At least you still got your legs. You can get up and walk out of the bush. But when I dislocated my shoulder, that wasn't the case at all. I was flat on my back, and I tried to stand up, and the pain was so overwhelming, I just kept on having to lay back down. So I kind of fell into some feather moss, and then with my hand I kind of dug up the moss, and the first thing I noticed is how cool it was, cool to the touch. So I put it on my shoulder, and that's one of those things. I was innovative, and it actually relieved the pain quite a bit just to have that cool feeling on the skin. So that helped me get my thoughts back together, and I was able to just suddenly rotate my arm and pop my shoulder back into place. That was quite painful, but I made it through the trip. Okay, I'm kind of settling in for the night here. Got pretty much everything ready. I don't have to spend a lot of effort on firewood. There's just firewood everywhere, naturally. I'll give you a quick tour of my camp. So I'll be sleeping close to the spear there. There's my shelter. Okay, now remember, it's getting dark. I definitely don't want to forget about safety and hurt myself here. So, an easy way to break firewood is use what you got. Use nature, and that is these two trees. So, put this log in between, roll back. That one was pretty easy. This one will require more force. I always do it from behind and pulling rather than pushing, because when you're pushing, there's a chance for something to go wrong. Oh, snap, perfect. Sometimes I'll even use the ground, just right in the ground. So now for the fire itself, what I do, I get my small stuff here, Old Man's Beard. If you want to take a look at that, this type of stuff, my pitch. I gather all the small stuff like this first. And I try to make a bit of a tunnel so it's overhanging. So if there's wind, my arm can go right in there in the wind and still light it. Now this longer stuff, what I do is once the fire is burning good, I'll lay those right on top. So imagine this is the fire. This is sitting right on top. It splits the wood for you. So that way you're not waking up in the night and trying to hammer through these logs of wood. It's tough in the night. You wanna just drag these long logs in, even if they're 20 feet long. Drag it in, put it on the fire. It will split naturally with the flames. You save your hands a lot of work, and you have a huge supply of wood, because if you sit there and try to chop up a log into 10 pieces, you're gonna drain all your energy. The fire will do that for you. Now this is paradise. Unfortunately, my SD card is about to run out of space again. It's really frustrating to come all the way out here only to run out of memory. 16 gigabyte card, and it's out in one day. Can't believe it. I guess that's the price of high definition video. I guess next time I'm gonna have to buy 5 or 6 of those cards. See, 10 years ago, I would have been pretty freaked out by those noises. But I've been out here enough to know that's just a redneck grebe, not a big deal. Might sound like an alien to a teenager, but nothing to worry about. I'm still not quite ready for my fire. I'm going to have to work on that. But as I said, I'm about to run out of space on the memory card. So I just want to show my body position in the shelter. This is basically how I'll sleep. Some of this stuff is annoying me already, but I can easily trim that up. Once I get my fire going, I'll knock off some of these branches, and I'll be sleeping like this. Quite comfortable, actually. Fire right here in front of me, keeping me warm, reflecting off the back wall. And if I was here for a long period of time, I would obviously keep building onto this to protect me against rain, whatever other elements may come my way. Speaking of weird noises, again, I just heard an American bittern. Kind of sounds like water going down the drain. Now that's a freaky noise to hear at night. I remember the first time I ever heard that, I was 20 kilometers back into the wilderness in Manitoba, 20 kilometers from the nearest person, and then I started hearing that sound, and I was really freaking out. I thought a UFO had just crashed or something, but once I got to know my bird calls, I realized it's just an American bittern. It's actually a pretty unique and cool thing to see. That's the view of my campsite. My campsite is in that spruce bluff. I'm out in the kayak gathering cattails for dinner. No success with anything else but cattails. Couldn't even find ants, frogs, nothing, snails. It's kind of an unusual survival trip, but Definitely lots of cattails around, so I'll collect some of those. Well, I just got the 3-minute warning, about to run out of space, so that's the conclusion of the show. Hope that's sufficient. I'm definitely gonna get back out it. This is my passion. I'll get back out here as soon as possible and do more survival, more filming, and best of all, exploring nature. Have a good night.